Hey, welcome to the book world, The Great Escape. I'm CJ Peterson, my co-host, Mr. Michael Scott Clifton. So thank you guys for joining us. Today is one of our favorite days of the month. It's book review day. And why do we like book review day, Mr. Mike?
Because we get to talk about what we love to do, which
And we
among
get
other, we get to read and we get to tell people about the books we've read.
to
And
share books about other people. So
that's right.
mhm.
That's right. Other authors, other writers.
Yes, other writers. So why don't we start with you? What book do you have today?
Okay, so let me see if I can get this centered. Everybody see that? Okay, too
Hmm.
much of a glare. It is called, let me see if I, maybe it's better there. Okay. The Devil's Advocate by Steve Kavanaugh. And it is uh, in the vein of the John Grisham books. It's sort of a legal thriller,
Hmm.
mystery legal thriller. I've read, this is the fourth or fifth book by Kavanaugh. A little background on him. He actually was born and raised in Belfast, Northern Ireland.
Oh.
Um, and he is a civil rights or was a civil rights lawyer
Hmm.
and practiced law, I think, there in Ireland. At some point, he must have moved to New York City because several of his previous books were based in New York City. And if you've ever read any of his previous books, which were based again in New York City,
Hmm.
um, you would have sworn that he grew up there. And it wasn't until I actually read a little bit about him, I thought he's from Ireland, Belfast. But his descriptions of the scenes and the setting, the buildings, the people, just the flow of life in a city like New York is like he'd been there his whole life.
Hmm.
And I assume he must have spent time there because he was too spot on too much of the description to have possibly not have spent a considerable amount of time there. So anyway, his character, make sure I can get the name of the character, um, is uh, dang, let me make sure he's um a lawyer, kind of like based, kind of remind me a little bit of the Mickey Haller, the Lincoln Lawyer, which is part of Michael Connelly's books that he's written about. A defense lawyer. In fact,
Hmm.
I think it's on Netflix as a series now. So anyway, the guy that is the lawyer here in uh, in the Devil's Advocate is someone who I mean, it literally it parallels a lot of what uh, has been written in the Connolly books with Mickey Haller. Anyway, this lawyer uh, does takes cases as they come to him. Somehow he gets wind of a case in a small Alabama town of a young black man who has been accused of murder.
Hmm.
Okay, so the prosecutor, a very uh, detestable person, apparently gets off on putting people on death row.
Oh,
Uh,
jeez.
it, it's almost like a drug addict. It's almost like a drug to him. He has this sadistic urge and pleasure on seeing people put on death row, and he actually watches, as they are executed. And to make sure that he has this itch, this sadistic itch scratched, the people that come to him, this district attorney in this small Alabama city,
Hmm.
um, he he cheats. He actually sets them up, and he makes sure that the uh, the evidence points toward a certain conviction, a death row conviction, and that includes any and all means possible to make sure that happens. So
Good grief.
So witnesses that might testify otherwise end up mysteriously killed.
Mhm.
Other witnesses who might testify for the defense are silenced somehow, either through threats or through bribes. And the law enforcement of this particular county and this particular town in Alabama uh, are under the thumb of this district attorney, either through the same bribes or through blackmail. Okay,
Wow.
so again, this district attorney, his character's name is Randall Korn, Korn,
Mhm.
um, is actually from a wealthy family and from back east, actually
Mhm.
from around the New York City area. And he ended up a district attorney in Alabama in this small town. And so he lives to prosecute murders and uh, send felons that are convicted of murder to death row. Okay, so uh, Kavanaugh's character takes the case. They end up going to Alabama, and they find out pretty quick that all is not what it seems
Mhm.
in terms of the evidence, in terms of what actually happened. Uh, Trying to think of how much can be said without giving it away. So uh, with Kavanaugh, his previous books, and it's kind of a there's a good and there's a bad, a pro and a con. So the pros for Kavanaugh, the way he writes, uh, he is a very, very good storyteller. He's very good at setting the scene and the tension and the conflict and the victims as opposed to the aggressors, and he does a stellar job with that. And that's one of the reasons why I like his books. He's also very good at scene description.
Mhm.
He is very good at describing people, describing acts that happen, uh, and what something is looking like in terms that everybody could understand. In fact, he embellishes those probably as good or better than any writer, perhaps except that I've seen this that's that is on par with him would be someone like Stephen King, who I think does a really good job as well. So his characters are sharp, the descriptions are sharp, everything is crisp and clean. The story flows along pretty good, and it's going back and forth between the POVs, the point of views of the
Mhm.
victim, of the corrupt and twisted prosecutor, of the defense attorney, and the people that work for him. Anyway, um, and of course, there is not one, there's not two, there's several twists to the end of the book, end of the story
Mhm.
that I didn't see coming, and I've read lots and lots of books, and I can almost always at least get a hint. I'm sure you're
Have
the
a
same
vague
way,
idea. Yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
of how it's going to end. But
Mhm.
and I was a little bit right, but I was mostly off the mark, so I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't see it coming,
Those are good.
and and so he keeps you on your toes. Where, like, where is this going? Where is it? You know, it's going to come to a head. You know, it's going to, you're going to have the great reveal between the tainted evidence and the extreme measures that the district attorney takes, as
Mhm.
opposed to the courageous and lawyer, defense lawyer. So, and all of that is there. Like
Mhm.
I said, it's very good. I love his books because they're always fast moving and they're always crisply displayed in terms of the scene and the setting.
Good.
Now, the negative part, okay, is related to what we talked about last week, which is PC checkoff points in a mainstream book.
That's
Okay,
Nancy. Nancy says it sounds like a really good book.
okay, it is. It is a really good book.
Mhm.
Um, So I can tell that Kavanaugh he may have, like I said, he may have lived in New York City because his description there is are spot on. But
Mhm.
I don't think he's ever lived in Alabama in a small town. He pretty much paints everybody that is a non-minority that lives in this small Alabama town as a racist, a closet racist, or a wannabe racist. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that all the African Americans, all blacks uh, are discriminated against and are persecuted, including the defendant who was charged with murder of a person that he worked with at a local diner.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you have the usual shots at the previous administration, bringing those back, and I've I've read other mainstream authors like I mentioned Michael Connelly, and they have a couple of those in there too. But Kavanaugh a goes to the next level on this, and I didn't really like having lived in the South now in
Mm-hmm.
Deep East Texas, just like you,
Mm-hmm.
and having been born and lived till I was 8 years old in Florida, and having a lot of my relatives that still live there. I know, to paint because a person lives in a geographic area as an automatic, you know, uh, race baiting racist is nonsense. Okay, it's just nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like his portrayal of uh, of the people in general terms as part and parcel, part of the evil district attorney, and the way they were bent toward minorities and things like that. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And to the degree that he went was way past what I thought was the bounds of just, the how do you put this? What you would expect
Like a
from a man.
standard level, sort
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It went past that, and it kind of distracted from the story, to be honest with you. And I didn't, and that part also, while a work of fiction is a work of imagination, okay, and it's not necessarily true, uh, you do have to make allowances for believability in terms of the imagination and the way things are. And I think
Mhm.
that Steve Kavanaugh stepped past those bounds, and I think that it compromised, I think, the enjoyment to me personally of the book, because I don't like when I read a work of fiction, I read, just like most people, to be entertained, to
Mhm.
escape. I do not like to get preached at or
Yep.
lectured to. And I felt like there was some of that going on in this, and it distracted from the story. It did not add to it. So
So as an overall, how many stars would you give it?
I would have given it a at least a four, maybe even a 4.5 to almost a five. But because of the added PC content that was totally unnecessary, and the generally of lumping whole groups of people just by their geography into a certain category. In this case, as white supremacists and racist and things like that. I would say it's a 3.5, 4. That the no higher than a 4, and maybe a little less than that. But another person may look at this and read the book because it is fast moving. I mean, I would say that
Mhm.
it's a very well written book, and it's a very good thriller. And there are twists and turns which you want to see in a thriller, and there are unexpected outcomes. And just for that, would have given it at least a 4. But if and some people can just read through that and it doesn't bother them, but it did bother me. So
Mhm.
I would give it a 3.5.
Especially since we literally just talked about it last week. So,
Right,
yep,
right.
a little bit still fresh. Well, my book that I'm doing is going to be Deadly Keepsakes by Anita Dickinson. And this is one of the books that I read for Lone Star Literary Light. She's going to be having a book blog tour, I think, starting either next week or this week. For this book in particular, the pre order was last month. And so it's a really good book. I actually give it 5 stars. It's the first one in what's called the Tori Winters mystery. And in it, I'm actually going to be looking for the next Tori Winters mystery, if that tells you how much I like this one. Uh, she starts off in Missouri as like a nurse, a hospice nurse, and it starts off with a murder. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. So it kind of goes from there. And she ends up being threatened because of this murder. And I'm not telling any plot points because that's literally right up front. And so she has to figure out how to get away from this particular scenario. And she ends up getting a call from this lawyer in Granbury, Texas. And he says he has some information for her. And that I'm not going to spell too much out for because that's an interesting plot twist. So, long story short, I had an idea of the who done it in this one and who was trying to kill her. But for a while there, you don't know where this person is because she's been trying to be killed no less than 3 times. So, and it's like you're trying to figure out, okay, where is it coming from? Who's actually doing it? And I had figured it out, but I didn't figure out the whole reason why. But she alludes to it enough that I was able to follow the path. And so while it wasn't that keep me guessing to the end type thing, the action was awesome. The ADD person in me was like enthralled the whole time. I literally read it in a day and a half, and it's like 357 pages. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
Yeah, I kind of with those not put down type things. And the action goes like all the way to the end. And the thing I love about her is I'm a bit of a history fanatic anyway. And what she did was this has a little bit of historical aspect in it, and she explained the real portion of the historical aspect at the end. So you get kind of a little bit of a little history. You know, this is where it came from, and this is why. And so that was pretty cool too, and I like that aspect. But it's very well written. The action just kept going and going. There are plot twists here and there, and it's like you really don't know who to trust, and you can feel that. And there's a lot of stuff you don't see coming. So I would totally recommend this book. And like I said, I will be actually looking for the next Tori Winters mystery book when it comes out because it was that good.
I
So,
wanted to add one more thing to the book review if we've got time
mhm,
for that, because I
we do.
forgot to tell you that the name of the character is Eddie Flynn.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the lawyer. Okay. Like Mickey Haller is the Lincoln lawyer for Michael Connelly, the author. Eddie Flynn is his recurring character in these books. And
Mhm.
Flynn was a former con artist and flim flam man, pickpocket, former thief that
Gotcha.
turned to defense lawyer. So that ought to give you a little. So he kind of knows the
Mhm.
dark side of the way things are as well.
He's worn both the black and the white hats.
Yes. Yep.
Yep. Now, the reason I love doing this sort of thing is because I love sharing other authors' stories with people, especially if you want a really good summer reads. This Deadly Keepsakes, like I said, is good, and it's going to be heading through the Lone Star Literary Life book blog tour, which will be coming out shortly. I know my review for Shelf Life blog is coming out on the 28th of July, so I know that that tour is somewhere within that point. So it's a really good book, and I totally recommend it. Also, for those with younger kids, Lone Star Literary Life does actually have a page for kids' summer reads. There's several books for children, there's young readers, there's middle grade readers, there's young adult readers. And so for parents who are looking for books for their younger ones, check it out. It's under lonestarliterarylife.com page and look for the kids' summer reads section. Trying to think as far as different places for like reviews. Reviews are important regardless. But if you can be constructive in some of your reviews, like for example, Mike's was constructive this time around a little bit, and it was not destructive, it was constructive. He had a little bit of critique to it, but it was because it was constructive and explaining why he felt the way that he felt. Um, so if you can do that in a review, go for it because as an author, I know I myself actually look for some of those and I've learned from some of those. But I always post them on Amazon and I always post them on Goodreads. Sometimes I'll pop over to Barnes and Nobles and pop one on there as well. Can you think of anywhere else, Mike?
Besides Goodreads and Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Mhm.
uh, Smashwords
Okay. If they're on
has,
there, yep.
yep, Smashwords, and Ingram Spark
iTunes,
Notes. Yeah,
Kobo,
iTunes, Kobo, um, Draft to Digital. Is that
Walmart,
a
if they're on Walmart or
yeah,
Target.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like, gosh, half a dozen or more of the digital platforms
Mhm.
outside of Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
But the big ones are like Amazon and Goodreads because that one will
Right,
boost it up,
right, right.
ideally.
Those are the two. I would say the most important. Not to belittle others, but it's where most of the traffic is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's most where the algorithms come into
Hmm.
play.
Yeah.
So next week we're going to have. We weren't able to have Mike Wigginton last week because there was something that popped up, scheduling conflict. So he's going to actually be here next week, and we'll be talking fantasy, which both of us appreciate a good fantasy book. So we're super excited about that. So Mike has some good news though. You just got your book up to the editor, didn't you? Or to the
Hey,
publisher?
yeah, yeah. Very excited. Book 4 of the Conquest of the Veil series,
Mhm,
which is titled Conquest of the Veil, which is titled Cavern of the Veil Queen. The
mhm,
fourth and last book of the Conquest of the Veil series, I finally finished. And we've talked before. Series books are great for readers. For me as a writer, each book was a little bit more difficult because I had to keep up with everything that
mhm,
was going on the book before, make sure it carried over to the next book, and that all the characters and plots aligned, and that the last book, of course, that all the loose ends were tied up. Very proud of the series,
good.
and I think this is a great book. The last one, of course, is they're all good, but the last one, as I said, ties it all together. I
Well,
started writing.
that last one is like the exclamation point. You can either kill a storyline or you can make a storyline. You have to
Yeah,
be very careful on how you do that.
right. And I think, I mean, we'll of course we'll see. Readers are the final,
Mhm,
adjudicators in terms of whether you did it right or not. But I did the best I could. I think it's a really good series, and it ends with a really good book. And what I'm exceptionally proud of is, and I'm probably going to do a blog post on this. I think I told you that as well.
mhm,
I started this book 15 years ago, uh, more like, well, 18 years ago, and and it's taken this long for me to learn enough about writing to become an experienced enough author to be able to produce a series, a coherent series, an interesting series, and one that uh, that can feel proud about. That I, that I think that it's of excellent quality with an excellent story and excellent characters. It's taken me almost 20 years to be able to learn what I needed to learn and to write the story out in a coherent and condensed fashion, which condensed into four books. So
mhm,
that wasn't always easy for others. I know, CJ, you're really good at getting a story out and a series out. I wish I had that kind of energy and foresight like you do, but it takes me a little bit longer to get to be able to do something like that. And so I can, like take a deep breath and because it's hard to explain, but your last book in a series, other authors probably know what we're talking about.
mhm,
Uh, there's no feeling like it when you finally write the last word and you've finished and you've done it.
mhm. Yeah. Well, I had my Team Angel series books is what I call them. It ends up being there's a standalone and then there's five, so that's six, seven, eight, nine. There's a trilogy, 10, 11, 12, 13 books. And so that spanned 10 years to complete. And that's trying to finish that on like a high note. It's kind of like I said, it's the author's worst fear to end on something like the series Lost, where you
Mm,
just like tanked the entire series with that last one. And so there's a lot of pressure, a lot more pressure on that last book than there is in the first books.
boy, that's the truth. That is exactly right. That is certain what was for me anyway. And it was, I don't know about your experience, but the last book was the hardest one for me, um, for a lot of different reasons. Um, but
Well,
but I
part
got it
of it
done.
is you have to continue to ratchet up. Like, for example, the Sands of Time trilogy that I had, it's like you got to take it from, you know, for me, I'm ADD and OCD. So I start off with kind of things start to blow up and then they explode and race against time. And then out of time, they end up going nuclear. And so it's like you have to continue to ratchet it up without losing the the reason for the story to begin with. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
the original concept, because a lot of times I've seen shows do this too, where they lose the original concept of the story and what people loved about it, and they end up killing it. It's like you don't want to do that. You want to
No.
end it on a good note, and you want to end it well.
That is that is exactly right. And getting an ending that is a good one, that
Mhm.
the reader is happy with, that the author is happy with, is not as easy as it might sound. And a good ending, I think, is critical to the success of an entire series. One only has to look at Game of Thrones on HBO and the
Uh,
last
yeah,
season
that
and the
tank
last
too.
episode of the last season. And it's like everything up to that point that had been, that had been good was just like, it's like you don't remember that. It's like that's the best they could do.
Well, they
You
had
know,
invested so many
yes,
years into something, so you want to
yeah,
make sure that it's good. But it's actually almost worse for a standalone book because I did a standalone book. I've done two of them now. The second one's coming out the end of August, beginning of September. And so it's like you have to cram everything in there, but you have to have that fine balance between making it too short
right,
or making it too long. And with the attention span of the way readers are now, it's like you got to be careful. And that window between 2 and 300 is kind of your safety window. But you got to make sure there's enough integrity within the story to hold it all the way through it and that you're not like rushing at the end.
right. And if you have readers that have followed your series, CJ, or that have followed mine, and you don't have a good ending, it's like they wasted all of that time and emotional energy invested in your books
Hmm.
just to have it end not well or
Yeah.
with a dud
Yeah.
and instead of a bang. You
Whereas
know,
if they found one of your standalones and they've read it and they absolutely love it, chances are they're going to go look and find out where you are and see
right,
if you have any other books.
right.
And that's
But
the ideal.
right, but single book, I would say I've read books that I thought, hey man, this is great, and we got to the ending standalone books, and it was, what? I read all of this book and that's it. I mean, I get that part, but boy, if I've read a series where I've had to read first, second, third, fourth, in your case, what, 12, 13 books in
13
a
and the
series?
one, yeah.
Okay. And then that last book, I've read all those books. I've been following along breathlessly waiting for the last one. And we don't end it right the way
It's
you know,
wrong.
oh no, it's, throwing rocks. Might have thrown pebbles on a single standalone book, but I'm going to throw rocks and boulders
Mhm.
if, if you don't, if you
Well,
disappoint me on that last one.
and it's a challenge just, different types of things. Like for example, the Texas Sisters Plus Press Holiday Anthology. It's 3,500 to 7,500 words. You have to tell like a complete story within 7,500 words. I mean, I'm the type of writer that I literally skirt 7,499 words is what I do. And I literally, that is what my story is this time around. And so it's like, I skirt that line, but like the challenge of a complete story within that is unique,
Hmm.
to
I
say
can
the least.
imagine. Right.
So I like the challenge of that
Well,
sometimes.
all I can say is that it's been a long journey. I'm happy with the way it ended, and I'm also relieved that I'm finished uh, and can take a breath now. And I do want to say all the people that have helped me along the way with this entire
Mhm,
series, including you, CJ, including Nancy E. Durham, who did the illustrations, who is,
mhm.
that did the map, to my critique group, Lisa, Skip, Gary, Vicky, Leanne. Appreciate all of it really literally does take a village to get
Mhm.
something like this done. And I appreciate the help and support of everyone that has allowed me to accomplish a book series, which I very much cared about. So, thank you,
Well, and
everyone.
the beauty is you have a spouse, Melanie, who is also as supportive as Trevor is
Right,
for me. And so
right.
it's like without that, we couldn't do any of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that just goes without saying. She has
Mhm.
put up with a lot at times, to say the
Well,
least.
I hate to say it, but we're at the end of our time. So next week, like I said, we're going to have author Mike Wigington, fantasy author. I'm pretty excited about that one. And we'll be talking to him same time, same box you found us, either on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Until next time, have a great week and try to stay cool by reading a book